Queen stood on the command deck of her flagship, watching the stars slide past the massive windows. She was tired. 3 years of war against the had drained her empire of resources, soldiers, and hope. But they had won. The had retreated to their home systems, licking their wounds. Peace had returned to the 12-star systems under her rule. Now came the boring work, rebuilding, counting losses, visiting the places where her people had suffered and died. Outpost Sigma-7 was one such place. She remembered the day they attacked that station. It had been a massacre. The enemy came without warning, their ships appearing from nowhere, their weapons tearing through the station's defenses like paper. 2,000 souls had lived on Sigma-7, diplomats, scientists, families, soldiers. When the battle ended, only 300 escaped on emergency shuttles. Had made a hard choice that day. The cost of repairing the station was too high. The damage was too severe. She ordered the survivors evacuated and marked Sigma-7 for abandonment. Let it float in the darkness, a tomb for those who died there, a monument to the price of war. That was 3 years ago. Now her ship approached the dead station on a routine patrol, and something was very wrong. "Your Majesty," her sensor officer said, his voice strange. "I am detecting power signatures from Outpost Sigma-7. Turned sharply. "That is impossible. The reactors were destroyed." "I am reading life support systems active in multiple sectors. Lights are on. Atmospheric shields are functioning." The officer looked up from his console, confusion clear on his face. "There is also one life sign aboard." One walked to the sensor station, her 4 eyes narrowing. "Show me." The screen displayed the station. It looked different than she remembered. Sections that should have been dark were glowing with light. Hull breaches that should have been open wounds in the metal were sealed. The station was not just surviving. It was alive. "The life sign is in Sector 7, the officer reported. "Species identification, human." Felt a strange chill run through her body. Humans were a young species, barely a century into space travel. They were small, soft, and fragile. They lived short lives and broke easily. They were useful for simple tasks but nothing more. What was a human doing alone on a station that should be dead? "One human," she said slowly, "for 3 years." "It appears so, Your Majesty." She was silent for a long moment. Then she straightened her back and made a decision. "Prepare my shuttle. I will see this for myself." The shuttle ride took 20 minutes. Sat in silence, watching the station grow larger through the window. Up close, the repairs were even more obvious. Someone had welded new metal plates over the hull breaches. The work was rough, uneven, clearly done by hand rather than machine. But it held. Against all logic, it held. Docking Bay 4 opened to receive them. The doors moved smoothly, without the grinding or shaking that damaged systems usually showed. Inside, the lights were bright and steady. The floor was clean. Someone had even painted fresh guidelines for landing ships, cheerful yellow arrows pointing the way. Stepped off the shuttle, her royal guards forming a protective circle around her. Their weapons were drawn. They did not know what to expect. The bay was silent except for a distant humming sound. The Queen walked forward, her boots clicking on the metal floor. Everything was clean, not just functional but genuinely clean. The scorch marks from the attack were gone. The debris had been cleared away. It smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals and something else, something organic and green that she could not identify. "Find the human," she ordered. They found him in Corridor 7G. He was a small man, even by human standards. His hair was black and cut short. His face was round and friendly, with the kind of wrinkles that came from smiling often. He wore a simple gray uniform with stains on the knees, and he was pushing a bucket on wheels, a mop in his hands. He was whistling a tune, soft and cheerful. When he saw the Queen and her guards, he stopped. His eyes went wide for just a moment. Then he put down his mop, straightened his back, and bowed politely. "Oh," he said. "Hello, I did not know anyone was coming today. I am sorry. The place is still a little messy. Stared at him. She had commanded armies. She had negotiated with the leaders of 100 worlds. She had faced death more times than she could count, but she had never felt so completely confused as she did at this moment. You, she said, her voice coming out sharper than she intended. Explain. This station was destroyed. I ordered it abandoned. How is any of this possible? The human scratched the back of his neck. He looked almost embarrassed. Well, destroyed is a strong word, he said. The primary reactor was still working. It just needed some adjustments, and the hull breaches were not as bad as they looked. There was a lot of scrap metal floating in the debris field outside. I brought some of it in and used it to patch the holes. He said this as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Felt her head starting to hurt. You repaired this station, alone, with no help for 3 years. Yes, the human said simply. Why? He seemed surprised by the question. He thought about it for a moment, as if he had never considered asking himself the same thing. Because it was broken, he finally said. I do not like broken things. They bother me, so I fix them. The Queen's lead guard leaned close to her ear. Your Majesty, this is clearly some kind of trick. No single being could do what he claims. We should arrest him and investigate properly. But was not listening. She was looking at the walls of the corridor, at the lights that should not work, at the air she was breathing, air that should not exist, at the floor beneath her feet, clean and solid and real. What is your name? She asked the human. He bowed again. Your Majesty, employee number 4417, Maintenance and Sanitation Division. He paused. I am the janitor. Looked at the janitor. The janitor looked back at her with calm, patient eyes. Show me, she said quietly. Show me everything you have done. Picked up his mop and smiled. It was a warm smile, the kind that made you want to smile back. Of course, Your Majesty, but I should warn you, it might take a while. I have been very busy. Led the Queen and her guards through the corridors of Outpost Sigma 7. He walked slowly, pointing at things as they passed, explaining his work with the casual tone of a man discussing the weather. Followed in stunned silence. With each step, her confusion grew deeper. The first stop was the Life Support Center. This was the heart of any space station, the system that kept everyone breathing. During the attack, enemy soldiers had targeted it specifically, remembered the reports. The machines had been reduced to twisted metal and broken wires. Repair was deemed impossible. Now the machines hummed quietly, green lights blinking in steady patterns. The main processors were destroyed, explained, opening a panel to show the insides. But the backup systems in Storage Bay 12 were still working. I moved them here. The wiring was tricky. I had to study the technical manuals for a long time, but eventually I figured it out. The Queen's chief engineer, a tall named, stepped forward to examine the work. His antenna twitched as he studied the connections. This is wrong, he said flatly. Nodded. I know, I did not have the right parts, so I used what I could find. Old cables, pieces from broken machines. I know it does not look correct, but it works. It should not work, insisted. The power ratios are all wrong. The connections are not standard. By every rule of engineering, this system should have failed within a week. I check it every morning, said. When something starts to fail, I fix it before it breaks completely. Prevention is easier than repair. Had no response to this. He simply stood there, his mouth hanging open, staring at the impossible machine that had kept one human alive for 3 years. They moved on. The next stop was the medical bay. During the attack, soldiers had looted everything valuable. They had taken the surgical equipment, the medicine, the diagnostic machines. They had left behind only empty rooms and broken furniture. Now the medical bay looked almost normal. There were beds arranged in neat rows. Shelves held bottles and containers. Machines blinked with soft lights. I could not replace the real medical equipment, admitted, but I found the emergency medical supplies in the escape pods. Nobody took those. I organized them here. The beds are made from cargo containers. I cut them open and added padding from the recreation center couches. He pointed to a strange machine in the corner. That is my sterilization unit. It was a dishwasher from the kitchen. I changed some parts so it could clean medical tools instead of plates. It is not perfect, but it keeps things safe from infection. Walked between the beds, running her hand over the fabric. The work was crude but careful. Every stitch was even. Every surface was clean. "Have you needed medical care during your time here?" she asked. Showed her his left arm. A long scar ran from his wrist to his elbow. "I fell from a ladder while repairing the communication array," he said. "The cut was deep. I had to stitch it myself using fishing line from the recreation supplies. It hurt a lot, but it healed." The Queen looked at the scar. It was rough and uneven, clearly done without proper tools or training. But the human stood before her, healthy and whole. He had survived an injury that would have killed many beings, using nothing but fishing line and willpower. They continued the tour. The hydroponics wing was next. This section had been completely destroyed during the battle. The outer wall had been blown open, exposing everything to the vacuum of space. Every plant had died. Every machine had frozen and shattered. Now the wing was green. Stopped in the doorway, her four eyes widening. The room was full of plants. Vegetables grew in rows of plastic containers. Vines climbed up strings attached to the ceiling. The air was warm and humid, filled with the smell of growing things. "I sealed the breach first," explained. "That took 2 months. The hole was very big. I had to weld many pieces of metal together. Then I rebuilt the atmospheric systems. Then I found seeds." "Seeds," the Queen repeated. "In the personal belongings of the crew who died," said quietly. His voice was softer now. "Many of them kept small plants in their rooms. Some had seeds they brought from their home planets. I collected them all. I planted them. Most did not survive, but some did." He picked a red fruit from a nearby plant and offered it to the Queen. "This is a tomato from Earth. Would you like to try?" Took the fruit. It was warm from the lights, smooth in her hand. She bit into it carefully. The taste was strange but pleasant, sweet and slightly sour. "It is good," she said. Smiled. "I am glad. I grew those from seeds I found in an officer's desk." She had written a note about wanting to grow tomatoes when she retired. She did not survive the attack, but her tomatoes did. The Queen finished the fruit in silence. She did not know what to say. The tour continued for hours. Every section of the station had a story. The communication array that had rebuilt using parts from 50 different broken machines. The water recycling system he had repaired by studying children's science books he found in the school section. The artificial gravity generators that he kept running through daily maintenance and constant prayers. By the time they reached the command center, was exhausted, not physically, emotionally. She had spent her life believing she understood the universe. She commanded an empire. She had seen wonders and horrors beyond imagination. But she had never seen anything like this. The command center was fully operational. Screens displayed information about every system on the station. Communication channels were open and working. The weapons systems showed partial functionality, enough to fight off a small attack. "I finished this section last month," said. "It was the hardest. Many of the computers were completely destroyed. I had to build new ones from spare parts. The programming took a long time to learn, but I found tutorial videos on the emergency entertainment database. Humans put instructions for everything on something called YouTube." The engineer stood in the center of the room, turning slowly, taking everything in. His antenna hung limply at his sides. He looked like a man whose entire understanding of reality had been shattered. "This is not possible," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "This should not exist. You are one person, one small, fragile human. You have no training, you have no proper tools, you have no help. What you have done would require 40 specialists working for 2 years, with a budget of 12 million credits. Consider this information carefully." "I had time," he said, "and I do not like leaving things broken." The Queen sat down in the commander's chair. The seat was comfortable. Someone had added a cushion. "Why did you not leave?" she asked. "When we evacuated the station, why did you stay?" Was quiet for a long moment. "My transfer paperwork was lost in the confusion," he said. "No ship came for me. By the time I realized I was alone, all the escape pods were gone. I could have sent a distress signal, but the communication systems were broken, so I decided to fix them. And while I was fixing them, I noticed other things that needed fixing, and then more things, and more." He shrugged. "Before I knew it, 3 years had passed. I kept meaning to send that distress signal, but there was always something else that needed doing first." Stared at him. This small man, this janitor, this impossible human who had rebuilt her empire's shame into something that worked. She said slowly, "I do not think you understand what you have done." He tilted his head, curious. "I just did my job," he said. "That is all." Night came to Outpost Sigma 7. Of course, there was no real night in space. The stars burned forever, unchanging, but had programmed the station's lights to dim and brighten on a cycle, matching the rhythm of Earth. It helped him sleep, he explained. It made the station feel less empty. Queen sat in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Her guards stood at the door, but she had ordered them to give her space. She needed to think. Arrived carrying a tray. On it were 2 cups made of rough brown clay, steam rising from them. "Tea," he said, placing the tray on a small table. "I grew the leaves myself, and I made the cups from clay I found in the art studio. There was a kiln there for teaching children pottery. I fixed it." Of course he did, thought. Of course he fixed it. She took a cup. The clay was warm against her hands. The tea smelled of flowers and earth, strange but comforting. "Sit with me," she said. It was not a command, it was a request. Sat across from her, holding his own cup carefully. He looked tired, she realized. Not sick or weak, but tired in the deep way that came from years of hard work and loneliness. "Tell me about yourself," she said. "Tell me about your life before this." Sipped his tea. He was quiet for a while, gathering his thoughts. "I was born in a small town in Korea," he said. "That is a country on Earth. My family was not rich. My father worked in a factory. My mother cleaned houses for wealthy people. We did not have much, but we had enough." He smiled, remembering. "My grandmother lived with us. She was the one who raised me, really. My parents worked so many hours. Grandmother was always there. She taught me everything important." "What did she teach you?" asked. "She taught me that nothing is ever truly broken," said. "She survived a terrible war when she was young. Her village was destroyed. Her family died. She had nothing, but she kept going. She rebuilt her life piece by piece. She married my grandfather. They had 7 children. They built a home with their own hands." He looked out at the stars. "She used to say that the secret to surviving anything is simple. You just do the next thing that needs doing. You do not think about how big the problem is. You do not worry about whether you will succeed. You just find one small thing you can fix and you fix it. Then you find the next thing, and the next. Eventually, you look up and realize you have built something." Listened in silence. She had heard many speeches in her life, generals talking about glory, politicians talking about power, philosophers talking about meaning, but she had never heard anything quite like this. "When did you become a janitor?" she asked. "After school I joined the space program," said. "I wanted to be an engineer. I studied hard. I passed all the tests, but there were many people better than me. Smarter, faster, more talented. I was not good enough to be an engineer." He did not sound bitter about this, just matter of fact. So they gave me a job in maintenance. Cleaning, fixing small things, emptying trash. It was not what I dreamed of, but it was honest work, and I discovered something important. What was that? I discovered that I was good at it, said. Not just cleaning, but noticing. I could walk into a room and see everything that was wrong. A loose wire here, a leaking pipe there, a machine making a sound it should not make. Other people walked past these things. They did not see them, but I did. He laughed softly. My supervisor used to joke that I could hear a problem before it happened. Maybe he was right. I do not know. I just know that I cannot ignore broken things. They call to me. They ask to be fixed. Set down her cup. And when you were left here alone, when you realized no one was coming for you, were you not afraid? Was quiet for a long time. Yes, he finally said. I was very afraid. For the first week I did nothing but cry. I sat in my small room and cried until I had no tears left. I thought I was going to die. I thought about all the things I would never do, all the people I would never see again. His voice was steady, but could see the pain in his eyes. But then I got hungry. I had not eaten for 2 days, so I went to find food. And on the way to the storage area I passed a broken light. It was flickering, making an annoying sound, and without thinking I stopped to fix it. He smiled at the memory. It took me 10 minutes. When I was done, the light worked perfectly, and I felt better, not happy, but better, like I had done something real, something that mattered. So you kept going, said. So I kept going, agreed. I fixed the light, then I fixed the door that was stuck, then I fixed the water pipe that was dripping, one thing after another, day after day. I did not think about rescue. I did not think about survival. I just thought about the next thing that needed fixing. He finished his tea and set down the cup. 3 years passed like that. Some days were hard. Some days I was so lonely I thought I would go crazy. But there was always another broken thing waiting for me. And fixing things, it kept me sane. It gave me purpose. Looked at this small human with new eyes. She had ruled an empire for 50 years. She had commanded armies of millions. She had made decisions that changed the fate of entire planets. She had always believed that greatness came from power, from strength, from intelligence. But sitting here in this observation deck, drinking tea made from leaves this man had grown himself, in cups he had shaped with his own hands, she realized something. Greatness could also come from stubbornness, from patience, from the simple refusal to give up. She said slowly, "Do you understand what you mean to my people?" He looked confused. "I am just a janitor, Your Majesty." "No," she said firmly. "You are much more than that. This station was a symbol of our failure, a reminder of everyone we lost. We abandoned it because we believed it was beyond saving. We believed that some things are too broken to fix." She gestured at the walls around them, the lights, the air they were breathing. "You proved us wrong, alone, with nothing but your hands and your will. You took our shame and turned it into something beautiful. Do you know what that means?" Shook his head. "It means hope," said. "When my people learn what you have done, they will understand that nothing is truly impossible. That even in the darkest moments, one person can make a difference. That broken things can be healed." Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I did not mean to inspire anyone," he said. "I just did not want to die surrounded by broken things. If I had to die here, I wanted to die in a place that worked, a place that was clean, a place that was loved. And that," said, "is exactly why you inspire us." They sat together in silence, watching the stars turn. Two beings from different worlds, different species, different lives. But in that moment, they understood each other perfectly. "My grandmother would have liked you," said quietly. "She always said that true leaders care about the small things, the broken lights, the leaking pipes, the people everyone else forgets." Smiled, "I would like to have met her." She died 10 years ago, said. But sometimes I feel like she is still with me, especially here, when I am fixing things. I hear her voice telling me to keep going, to do the next thing, to never give up. Then she is here, the Queen said, in every repair you made, in every system you saved. Her spirit lives in this station just as it lives in you. Wiped his eyes. Thank you, Your Majesty. That is the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me. They finished their tea as the artificial night grew deeper, and the stars continued their endless dance beyond the windows. The news spread across the empire like fire through dry grass. A human janitor had rebuilt an entire space station, alone, with no help, using only broken parts and determination. At first, people did not believe it. They thought it was a joke or a mistake. How could one small human do what an army of engineers could not? It was impossible. It was ridiculous. It was a lie. Then the videos came. Queen had ordered her guards to record everything during the tour. Now those recordings played on every screen in the empire. People watched explain his repairs in his calm, patient voice. They saw the hydroponics bay full of green plants. They saw the medical bay built from cargo containers. They saw the command center running on computers made from spare parts and hope. They watched the small human push his mop bucket down the corridor, whistling his strange earth tune. And slowly, belief began to spread. The reaction was overwhelming. Messages poured into the royal court from every corner of the empire. Military commanders wanted to give medals. Scientists wanted to study his methods. Politicians wanted to use his story for their campaigns. Entertainment companies wanted to make movies about his life. But the strongest reaction came from ordinary people. Mothers told their children about the janitor who never gave up. Workers who felt ignored and unimportant suddenly walked taller. Young people who had lost hope began to find it again. In every city, in every station, in every colony, people started talking about. If he can do that, they said, then maybe I can do something too. The effect on humans was even stronger. Earth was still a young power in the galaxy. Humans were seen as weak, fragile, unimportant. They took the jobs nobody else wanted. They lived in the parts of stations nobody else cared about. They were tolerated but never respected. Change that. Suddenly, everyone wanted to hire humans. They were stubborn, people said. They never quit. They could fix anything. Human workers found themselves getting promotions and better assignments. Human diplomats were treated with new respect. Human culture became fashionable in ways it never had been before. On Earth itself became a national hero. His face appeared on the news every day. Schools taught lessons about his life. The president of the United Korea Federation gave a speech calling him the greatest example of human spirit in the space age. His family was found and interviewed. His elderly mother cried on camera, saying she always knew her son was special. His younger sister said she was not surprised at all because had been fixing things since he was a child. His nephews and nieces became instant celebrities. Through all of this, remained on Outpost Sigma 7. He watched the news sometimes when he took breaks from his work. He saw his face on screens across the galaxy. He heard people calling him a hero, a legend, an inspiration. He found it all very strange. I just did my job, he told the Queen during one of their evening tea sessions. Why is everyone making such a big deal? Laughed. She had started to enjoy these conversations very much. The human had a way of seeing the world that was completely different from anyone she had ever met. Because you did something impossible, she said, and you did it without asking for glory or reward. That is rare in this universe. But I am not special, insisted. Any human would have done the same thing. That is exactly what makes you special, the Queen replied. You do not see yourself as special. You see yourself as ordinary, as just a janitor, and yet you accomplished extraordinary things. That is why people love your story. The offers kept coming. Every day, messages arrived for job offers from the wealthiest corporations in the galaxy, marriage proposals from admirers on 100 worlds, invitations to speak at universities, to lead research teams, to advise governments. The most impressive offer came from herself. She arrived one evening with a formal document, sealed with the royal symbol. She said, "The Imperial Council has voted unanimously. We wish to offer you the position of Grand Engineer of the Empire. You would oversee all construction and repair projects across our territories. You would have unlimited resources, a staff of thousands, and authority second only to mine." She held out the document. "This is the highest technical position in our civilization. No human has ever held such a rank. You would make history." Looked at the document. He did not touch it. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "I am very grateful for this honor, but I cannot accept." Was not surprised. She had learned enough about this human to expect such an answer. "May I ask why?" Thought for a moment, choosing his words. "When I was young, my grandmother told me a story," he said. "There was once a famous chef who made the best soup in the village. Everyone loved his soup. It was perfect. One day, a rich lord came and offered to make him the head cook of the royal palace. The chef would have servants. He would cook for kings. He would be famous." "And what did the chef do?" asked. "He refused," said. "He said that his soup was perfect because he made it with his own hands. If he had servants, if he cooked in a fancy kitchen, if he tried to feed thousands instead of dozens, his soup would not be the same. It would lose its soul." He gestured at the walls around them. "This station is my soup," he said. "I know every wire, every pipe, every bolt. I fixed them with my own hands. I talked to them when I was lonely. They are my friends now. If I leave, if I try to command thousands of engineers across the galaxy, I will lose this. I will become something I am not." "You would have power," said. "You would help millions of people." "Maybe," agreed. "Or maybe I would just become another administrator sitting in meetings signing papers. I am not good at those things, Your Majesty. I am good at fixing things. Real things. Things I can touch." He picked up his mop, which was never far from his side. "This station still has problems. The secondary power grid is unreliable. The water recycling system needs upgrading. The artificial gravity sometimes wobbles in Sector 9. There is so much work still to do." "You want to stay here," said, "as a janitor." "I want to stay here as myself," corrected gently. "And myself is a janitor. A good janitor, I think. Maybe the best janitor in the galaxy, but still a janitor." Looked at the document in her hands. Then she smiled and put it away. "I thought you would say something like that," she admitted. "And I think I understand. You are not refusing out of false modesty. You are refusing because you know who you are." "My grandmother always said that knowing who you are is the most important thing," said. "More important than wealth. More important than power. More important than fame." "Your grandmother was very wise." "She was," agreed. "I miss her every day." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, then spoke again. "If you will not accept the position," she said, "will you at least accept a gift?" Looked suspicious. "What kind of gift?" "New mops," the Queen said, smiling. "The best mops in the Empire, and a full set of professional cleaning supplies, and new tools for your repair work, and enough seeds to fill 3 more hydroponics bays." His face lit up like a child receiving a birthday present. "Really?" he said. "New mops." "The very best," confirmed. "Then yes," said happily, "that I will accept. Thank you, Your Majesty, thank you very much." And for the first time since she had found this impossible human on this impossible station, Queen laughed with pure joy. 3 years passed. Outpost Sigma 7 was no longer a forgotten ruin at the edge of the Empire. It had become the most requested diplomatic posting in 12 star systems. Ambassadors fought for the chance to serve there. Scientists begged for research positions. Tourists applied for visitor permits years in advance. Not because the station was beautiful. It was not. The repairs were still rough and patched. The walls still showed scars from the old battle. The technology was still held together by creative engineering and stubborn faith. People came because of. He was still there, of course, still pushing his mop bucket through the corridors, still whistling his strange earth tunes, still fixing things before they broke and breaking things before fixing them better. The station had changed around him. The Empire had sent supplies, equipment, and staff. There were now 50 people living on Sigma-7, engineers, scientists, diplomats, and their families, but remained in charge of maintenance. Nobody questioned this. Nobody dared to suggest otherwise. The other workers treated him with a mixture of respect and awe. Young engineers would follow him around, watching how he worked, asking questions about his methods. He answered them all patiently, showing them the tricks he had learned during his years alone. The secret is not skill, he would tell them. The secret is attention. Every machine speaks to you if you listen. It tells you when it is happy. It tells you when it is tired. It tells you when it is about to fail. You just have to pay attention. The young engineers nodded and took notes, though most of them could never quite hear what heard. He had a gift that could not be taught. Visitors came from all over the galaxy. Some were famous, leaders of nations, celebrities, wealthy merchants. They all wanted to meet the legendary Janitor. They all wanted to shake his hand and take pictures with him. Treated them all the same way, politely, warmly, without any care for their status or power. He would offer them tea from his garden and show them his favorite parts of the station. He would tell them about his grandmother and her wisdom about fixing broken things. Most visitors left feeling strangely changed, humbled perhaps, or inspired. There was something about that made people want to be better, not through great speeches or dramatic actions, just through his example, through the quiet way he went about his work, through his genuine love for the things he cared for. Queen came often, much more often than her duties required. She would arrive without warning, her ship appearing from hyperspace, and she would spend hours walking through the station with. They had become friends, real friends despite the vast difference in their power and status. Found that she could talk to in ways she could not talk to anyone else. He did not want anything from her. He did not fear her. He simply listened, offered his simple wisdom, and poured more tea. My council is arguing about the new trade agreement with she told him one evening. Half of them want revenge for the war. Half want to move forward and build peace. I do not know which path to choose. Considered this while checking a temperature gauge on the wall. What would your grandmother say? He asked. Smiled at the question. She had started thinking of his grandmother as her own in a strange way. I do not know. My grandmother died when I was young. She was a warrior, fierce and proud. She probably would have wanted revenge. My grandmother was a survivor, said. She saw her village burned. She had every reason to hate, but she chose differently. She said that hate is like a broken pipe. It leaks poison into everything around it. The only way to fix it is to seal it shut and build something new. He tightened a bolt, nodding with satisfaction. Maybe revenge would feel good for a while, he continued. But what would you build with it? More hatred, more war, more broken things. Peace is harder. Peace means forgiving people who hurt you. But peace also means you can finally stop fighting and start fixing. Did not respond. She watched the stars through the window and thought about broken pipes and leaking poison. The next month she signed the peace treaty with It was controversial. Many of her people were angry, but she stood firm. Some things must be fixed, she said in her address to the Empire. Even when it is hard, even when others do not understand, we must always choose building over breaking. Nobody knew that her words came from a janitor on a forgotten station, but knew, and when he watched the speech on the news, he smiled. Years continued to pass, grew older. His hair turned gray, his movements became slower, but he never stopped working. Every morning he walked the corridors of his station, checking systems, cleaning floors, making sure everything was in order. The station had grown. New sections had been added, gardens and parks where children played, schools where young beings learned about science and art, a museum dedicated to the history of the battle and the miracle of rebuilding. In the center of the museum stood a simple display: a mop, a bucket, a worn gray uniform, and a small sign that read, "The tools of who taught an empire that nothing is beyond repair." Young visitors would stand before this display and whisper to each other. They had all heard the stories. Some did not believe them. How could one man do so much with so little? It seemed like a fairy tale. But the station existed, the repairs held, the plants grew, the evidence was all around them. One day did not wake up. He passed peacefully in his sleep, in the small room where he had lived for over a decade. He was 87 years old. On his desk was a half-finished repair manual and a cold cup of tea. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. For the first time in memory, all 12 star systems observed a day of mourning together. Even the former enemies lowered their flags. Queen came for the funeral. She was old now too, her body bent with age, her scales faded with time. But she walked into the observation deck where she and Had shared so many conversations, and she sat in his favorite chair, and she cried. Not for the legend, not for the hero everyone talked about. She cried for her friend. The ceremony was simple, had left instructions, written in his careful handwriting. He wanted no speeches, no grand monuments, just a small gathering of the people who had worked with him and then back to work. There were always things that needed fixing. They buried his ashes in the garden he had created, under the tomato plants that still grew strong, descendants of the seeds he had planted so many years ago. But his legacy did not end there. Across the galaxy, people remembered the janitor. Children grew up hearing stories about him. Young workers took pride in humble jobs. Engineers learned to listen to their machines. Leaders learned to value peace over revenge. And on Outpost Sigma 7, now officially renamed Station, a tradition began. Every new worker on their first day was given a mop and a bucket. They were told to clean the corridors themselves, no matter their rank or position, to understand that all work has dignity, that fixing small things leads to fixing big things, that nothing is truly broken beyond repair. Above the main entrance, a plaque was installed. It bore a simple message, words that had often said, "The secret to surviving anything is simple. Just do the next thing that needs doing." And every day, on stations and ships and colonies across the galaxy, beings of every species did exactly that. They found broken things and fixed them. They found problems and solved them. They looked at the darkness and chose to light a candle, because a janitor from Earth had shown them how. And somewhere, in whatever place, good souls go when their work is done. An old woman who had survived a war was embracing her grandson, telling him she was proud, and asking him to finally rest. But knowing him, he was probably already looking for something to fix.